Hello everyone, welcome back to another 10 underrated Commander cards video. I want to remind you all that in the description below you will find my affiliate link to tcgplayer.com. There, whatever purchases you make will go towards helping the channel. Thank you very much, I appreciate all of your support. So underrated Commander cards videos, these are pretty much what I do to mostly help out newer players or just anybody looking to find a cool card they maybe never seen before, never heard of, never found out about the interactions, and they could throw it into one of their Commander decks. Obviously the focus of the video is going to be cards that are good in Commander, and I go over 10 cards in no particular order. It's not a ranking, it's just any 10. So for today, July 25th, these are 10 cards that I think are currently underrated in Commander. The first one is Chaos Wand, a 3-mana artifact from M19. With an ability of 4 mana and tap it, target opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile an instant or sorcery card. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost, then put the exiled cards that weren't cast this way on the bottom of that library in a random order. This card is incredibly fun if you can get some sort of combo going. It's not quite as easy without a Paradox engine because that's banned now, but I just remember that being so much fun to do, and I love cards that allow you to steal from your opponents. It just helps make the playing experience more unique. And the cool thing about this is that you are pretty much guaranteed to get an instant or sorcery. I don't know too many decks that don't play either. You're likely going to choose the player who has the Spellslinger strategy, or even someone you know has a pretty devastating instant or sorcery. Something like an Insurrection would be really powerful. Just a lot of awesome possibilities. It just makes every game a little bit different, because you're not going to be playing against the same decks every game. The next one is kind of an oldie. It's Enduring Renewal from Ice Age, 4 mana, white enchantment. You play with the cards in your hand face up on the table. If you draw a creature card from your library, you discard it, but whenever a creature goes into your graveyard from play, you put that creature into your hand. This is a very odd card, and it could be hard to follow exactly how it interacts with everything else in your deck, which is why I think some people stay away from it. But specifically with my experience in the Commander Teshar Ancestors Apostle, it's a fun way to not necessarily go off and combo an infinite or do anything like that, but there are some interactions where if you keep dumping creatures in your graveyard, with this commander you can get them back to your hand. If you draw into other creatures, they're going into the graveyard, and then you can just keep playing historic spells, get them back, so it can aid a combo. I think it's a really cool card, one that I don't really see at all in any other deck. So if you think you can do something cool with it, check it out. I always thought it was an interesting card. The next one is Energy Flux. 3 mana blue enchantment. All artifacts gain at the beginning of your upkeep. Sacrifice this artifact unless you pay 2 mana. So this is kind of like a Tabernacle, but it's only for artifacts, making it so difficult to play an artifact deck. Not saying that people can't get around this, they just have to spend a lot of mana to keep their important artifacts around. You're likely to see this in some stacks decks, and it's not something I think really helps any strategy other than stacks. It's just so oppressive. If you can force your opponents to pay attacks just to keep their stuff on the board, you can stop them from playing Magic for at least a few turns until they can find some sort of permanent removal. Pretty cool card. I also like how the artwork is just Karn looking old derpy. Then we have this really insane blue card. This is back from Khans of Tarkir. 9 mana, blue sorcery, Clone Legion. For each creature target player controls, put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that creature. Khans of Tarkir, I remember just being one of the most open sets. Everybody wanted to open it for the fetch lands. So you ended up with a lot of bulk rares, a lot of bulk mythics, because everybody wanted the fetches. This is one of those mythics that I think a lot of people just overlook because it's incredibly expensive and it's only really good in Commander. But that means it's really good in Commander. May not have any sort of usefulness elsewhere, but you can realistically get to 9 mana no problem in a single game. Once you play this, you're going after whoever has the most impressive board. They're likely going to have the best creatures. You basically give yourself their creatures in addition to whatever creatures you already have. This is also really fun in certain token decks because you can also copy tokens, you can manipulate tokens, you can of course double them. I think a lot of cool things about Commander now is that you see interactions with tokens beyond just adding more tokens, so you can get more copies of a good token instead of just settling for like a 1/1 white weenie. Just a very powerful spell. It could be a game winner too. And then we have Kaya's Ghostform. Very awesome budget card, but even if it's budget, I still think it's good for mono black. You don't necessarily have to depend on a Lightning Greaves or a Swiftfoot Boots. Maybe if you want the haste, Bakaya's Ghostform for 1 black mana. This aura will enchant a creature or a planeswalker you control. When the enchanted permanent dies or is put into exile, put that card onto the battlefield under your control. Which is awesome because while it's not going to stay there permanently, one of the most difficult things to have to deal with when you do have a Lightning Greaves or a Swiftfoot Boots is board wipes. It can protect the creature from getting swords, but if your opponent has a board wipe that exiles everything or destroys everything, your creature is screwed. Not to mention, you could of course throw this onto a planeswalker and keep that planeswalker around. I think it's smarter though to just have this if your deck is centered around your commander. Also, 1 mana black enchantment makes it very good if you're playing an enchantment themed deck. A lot of decks that look for cheap, affordable enchantments to cast just so they can trigger abilities. So it's dual purposed, really cool card, just a common for more of the sparks, so dirt cheap. Next we have Nixilis Unshackled, all the way back in M15. I remember a lot of people liking this card, but I haven't really seen it around that much since. 6 mana, 4/4, legendary demon, flying trample. Whenever an opponent searches his or her library, that player sacrifices a creature and loses 10 life. And whenever another creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Nixilis Unshackled. So a lot of good abilities there. Again, it kind of follows the Stacks theme. Stacks is primarily resource denial, so punishing your opponents when they search their library. It's very good because it triggers whenever they do something like crack a Terramorphic Expanse or an Evolving Wilds. It's not just for the obvious stop a demonic tutor. I think a lot of people might think. Your opponents will end up searching their libraries a ton. I don't think people realize that. So they have to sack a creature and lose a quarter of their starting life total. I think that's pretty good. Maybe not necessarily a commander, but definitely commander material. And then we have the card Disrupt Decorum, 4 mana, red sorcery from Commander 2017. Goad all creatures you don't control. I think I've talked about this card a lot before. Maybe I didn't put it on an underrated cards list, but now it is. Until your next turn, those creatures attack each combat if able and attack a player other than you if able. Red has a lack of precision in the game, and I think a lot of people interpret that as a weakness. Which, yeah, I would say it's weak when you have targeted removal that can get the job done. You can't always depend on something random to solve the problem. But Disrupt Decorum is one of those cards that makes the game fun. So instead of spending that 4 mana on a board wipe, instead of spending that 4 mana on anything that could target and destroy what you want to destroy, just make your opponents attack each other with those creatures you don't like. So you're pretty much just applying pressure to your opponents, hoping that one of those other opponents will have an answer for the creature you really want to deal with, or maybe you just want to cause some chaos. Either way, I think no matter the reason why you're playing this, it's a very good card. And then we have Molten Primordial. I love the Primordials, but Molten Primordial is probably my favorite. 7 mana, red, 6/4 creature avatar with haste. When it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, gain control of up to 1 target creature that player controls until end of turn. Untap those creatures, they gain haste until end of turn. So this creature is basically like 3 active treasons if you have 3 opponents. Giving those creatures all haste means that you can easily just swing in for the win, depending on what creatures you take. I think also considering we have sacrifice outlets in the game, taking creatures is also really deadly in Commander because you can just sacrifice them instead of giving them back at the end of turn. And then we have Hydra Broodmaster. This 6 mana green Hydra from Journey into Nyx is a very underrated and I think a budget-friendly win con for green decks. It's a 7/7, and it's really cool because this Monstrosity ability from Theros, while it wasn't super effective for most creatures, this one has Monstrosity X. You have an ability here with 1 green and 2 X's. So if you put 10 into X, you're going to get 5/5/5 green Hydra creature tokens. Obviously, if you're playing green, you're going to have a lot more mana than just 10. So if you put 20 into X, you can get 10 green Hydra creature tokens, making this a very good win con. Although those creatures don't have trample, it's very easy to distribute trample. You can even give all of your creatures trample. Very easy to have that happen in green. Not to mention the obvious Hydra synergies and the fact that mana sinks are just really cool to have in Commander. You could get infinite mana and then make an insane number of massive Hydras. I think for the most part it's been viewed as a bulk rare, and rightfully so. I think in Standard and other formats, it's not exactly the easiest thing to dump a lot of mana into. Those aren't exactly the formats you look to get a lot of mana in. And for 6 mana, a 7/7 with no keywords like trample or any way to get damage through, it's really only something that was meant to succeed in Commander. And then the last card to talk about is Wave of Vitriol. 7 mana green sorcery, back from Commander 2014, so it's been quite a while. Each player sacrifices all artifacts, enchantments, and non-basic lands he or she controls. For each land sacrificed this way, its controller may search his or her library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Then each player who searched his or her library this way shuffles it. I think a lot of removal, in Commander especially, you're going to see some of the best removal. Destroys something or exiles something and then rewards your opponent with a land or some sort of life gain or a token, something like that. Wave of Vitriol pretty much just says, nope, all artifacts, enchantments, and non-basic lands, they're gone, but for each one you do get a basic. This might just be one of the most underrated green cards you could ever play in Commander. I think the more competitive EDH decks have become, the more non-basic lands you see, and oftentimes you'll run into a situation where your opponents just don't have that many non-basics, so they might be out of the game. You're hitting their enchantments, their artifacts, a lot of their mana producers. So yeah, in the right situation, this could be a game winner. I think it just does what you need it to do in the Commander format, you know? So anyway guys, that's going to do it for today's video. These 10 I think are pretty underrated. Underrated to me doesn't necessarily mean it's powerful and people just haven't noticed it. I think underrated could just be a fun card that has some very interesting interactions that might make the experience more fun for certain people. Doesn't have to be a shutdown card. Doesn't have to be an unknown combo. Just anything that might open up the game for newer players that are looking for some cards. Most of the time, these are budget friendly too. Just about every card on this list I don't think is expensive at all. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If so, again, check out the TCG Player affiliate link. That's an easy way to support the channel. Also, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Anyway, Void here signing off. You all have a wonderful day.